to Secret Weapons, and today we're taking a look at the Rewind Programmable Echo from Alexander Pedals. Pound for pound, I'm not sure anybody brings quite as much to the table as Alexander Pedals does these days. In terms of feature set versus format, the Leap series is one of the most ambitious things we've seen in the pedal industry in recent memory. The flagship pedal from this line was the Space Race stereo reverb that we covered on this channel earlier this year. And today we are here with the very, very ambitious follow-up, the Rewind Programmable Echo. This is a stereo in, stereo out, MIDI capable 10 mode, and we're going to put an asterisk on that delay pedal from Alexander in this Leap series, and it does a lot. We put that asterisk on 10 mode because despite it having all of your standard fare analog, digital, tape delays, diffused delays, lo-fi delays, dynamic delays, multi-filter delays, that kind of thing, you have subcategories within a lot of these that almost feel like they should break out into their own delay engines. So as a result, you have what I would consider to be closer to 15 to 20-ish very unique delay sounds within this thing. And I don't just mean things like the tape delay having 4 read heads and being able to access any configuration of those 4 read heads in this thing. And I'm not just talking about the fact that you can create 3 different versions of dual delay in the dual delay engine on this thing, being mono, stereo, and ping pong. You also have filter delays that can be fixed filters, envelope filters, or LFO control filters. You have a 2.5 second reverse in this thing. And what's interesting is you have a lot of sounds in here that I honestly would argue are better served as dry guitar tone modifiers than they are as kind of like modifiers on a delay engine. They are at their core here meant for the delay trails on this thing, but you can so easily dial up a full wet, 0 feedback, 0 delay time sound on this thing that you can take any of the things you like about the modulation engines, the lo-fi effects, the bit crushing effects, and apply it directly to your guitar itself with relative ease in this thing, and we will cover a lot of that in those sound samples. I'm actually recording this part of the video about 3 hours after this pedal was announced. I'm a little behind the ball right now. This video is going up so later in the day on release day for the Rewind, and because it's already been announced, I had some people in my Patreon exclusive Discord asking me about this and how I thought it stood up against big box delays like the Timeline and that kind of thing. And I think that this actually is a very interesting contender in that space, not because it's going to all at once replace something like a Timeline or a Time Factor or something like that, but instead will serve as a kind of major relief to somebody who needs a lot of what a Timeline can do, something that does that kind of go-to digital, tape, and analog sounds, but in a much smaller format. You don't have to sacrifice a ton of pedalboard real estate with this. You don't need to sacrifice a high milliamp draw port on your power. But also, this will do a lot of weird stuff that a lot of conventional big box multi-engine delays won't do. For instance, on that intro piece, when we get to the kind of big second half of the song, there's these kind of bit crushed lo-fi guitar sounds happening. That's this thing's digital delay algorithm set full wet with no delay time. There are chorusing and flanging things that you can do with this. There are great stereo chorusing sounds. There are great lo-fi, kind of like overdriven tape machine sounds in here that can be applied to your dry guitar in very interesting ways. Honestly, I would say that half of the engines in this thing are better suited as modulation engines than they are as delay engines, and the other half are really good delay engines. So we're going to dig in, we're going to walk through my favorite presets that I have made in here, and then we're going to kind of dig into all of the modes and kind of at least touch briefly on what makes every single version of this thing so interesting and compelling. So let's go to our top-down camera. Before we get into our sound samples, let's go ahead and talk through our signal chain and the context we are working in. I am playing a Jennings Voyager Deluxe with Lambertone Crema pickups into the Benson Germanium Boost, the 1981 Inventions Op-Amp DRV, the Alexander Pedals Rewind, and then we go from in stereo to the Strymon Flint and out to our amplifiers, which are the Universal Audio Ruby and Dream in a stereo pair. The Benson Germanium Boost and the Flint sound like this. DRV is just here for a little bit of hair. And let's start things off with this tape delay. This is kind of like my immediate go-to on this and most delays these days. And I think that the Alexander crew did a really good job with the tape delay on here. So let's kind of do some menu diving, especially on this tape one, just to kind of start things off. So you have your mix, your time. Let's go nice and slow. Oh, the nice thing is your dry kill is going to be just in that mix control right there. So it's not like a sub-menu thing. You just kind of like turn up the mix and it goes straight to that, which is really great. And then over here you have your the delay algorithm you're on. Click onto the next page. We have our wow and our flutter and our tape age. As well as the head controls. So you have 4 heads and a bunch of configurations. Let's go ahead and give us a little bit more delay, a little snappier delay time. And then A and C, which is, again, you have all these combinations, which is great. And you're almost getting into like built-in diffusion at this point. Just very choppy. And then you've got your tapped subdivisions, your ramp, your overall level, and how the toggle operates. Now bear in mind, we're not going to spend this amount of time on every single algorithm, but the tape is, at time of recording, my favorite algorithm on this thing. I think it just sounds well balanced. And I'm a really big fan of everything about it. Really my only gripe about the tape algorithm on this thing is my only gripe about the tape algorithm on this thing is going to be a lot of the modes in this thing have stereo control built into them. You can kind of widen things or assign things left and right, and the tape algorithm on this thing does not have that. It kind of sits, it just sits center. But even within the context, I actually kind of do often like a good mono delay instead of a stereo delay, especially if I'm doing the rhythmic thing, and I tend to really like tape delay for that rhythmic thing. Let's jump on over to what I have called Runaway, which is a modified version of one of the stock presets, but using the analog delay. And there's that stereo we were talking about. So again, a lot of the same controls up front. That depth control is going to be how wide the modulation applied to that stereo image is. So you have your rate and your depth, you have your tone, and then you have, on this one, the ability to pick a waveform for your modulation. And as you can hear, the wider you go on that, or the higher you go on that depth, the wider you go. You can get really melty really quick. I like to keep the rate super low on this setting. Okay, this is a thing that we will touch on later. I used it in the intro part of the video, but it's something that I think is really interesting. Square wave on this thing can actually yield some really interesting weirdness. So if we take that rate nice and slow, click back to our mix control, and go full wet, you'll hear that as the kind of like high points and low points of that modulation kind of oscillate between their different states, you will actually hear your delay relative to your mix, your stereo environment change as well. Which is a really weird choice, but actually something that I think is really interesting. If we jump over to our random waveform, bring that depth nice and high, keep that rate super low, and then let's actually bring that tone kind of down, make it seem kind of like lo-fi and dark, and bring that time super short so that we're getting So again, I like that random waveform. The square is also great for this. ourselves some ambience to play into with this weirdness. And then, of course, you also have sawtooth ramp ups and ramp downs. Yeah, the analog delay on this is super cool. That stereo image is really fun to play around with. Oh, and we step straight into exactly what I was talking about, that digital delay, but as a computer. One of the interesting quirks about the digital delay on this thing is that it is a bit crushed delay. You can reduce your sample rate and your bits to kind of progressively make your delay sound like older and older digital tape machines. And that's what I'm doing here, but with full wet and that kind of like wide random stereo modulation applied to it. On the intro, that big kind of like breakdowny part, the or whatever I was playing there. The breaks in the middle there are this exact setting right here. So interesting, such a cool, bizarre sound. But also, it's also a delay. And you can kind of dial in a more reasonable But yeah, the pro tip is if you want clean repeats, don't take your bits to max. If you want clean repeats, take your bits to minimum. That turns off the bit crushing. Sine wave, something a little bit more subtle. And then let's take it back to like a dotted eighth. Setting that modulation super subtle like this, very, very low rate, very, very low depth on that sine wave, if you listen to that with headphones on, you'll hear that it's just drifting from center channel and out, which I think in a lot of ways is a very interesting approach to this kind of stereo modulation. Yeah, super cool. This is one of the lo-fi modes. I have it set up as a slapback for, like I said, that heavy part on the intro. I think that the lo-fi on this thing has just enough grit and hair to it that set subtle, you can create some really great kind of embiggening of rhythm guitar parts without washing them out. And yes, embiggening is a perfectly cromulent word. So like, here's a good example of that. Let's go to a plate reverb. Bring that color down, make that reverb nice and subtle. Like, I dig that, but if you want something with a little bit more hair to it, a little bit more wash to it, it's just that single slapback on that lo-fi sound, and it sounds freaking great for this exact purpose. So let's hear why that sounds really cool. Let's give it some more repeats. And a little bit more time. So we have our rate and our depth set, we have our tone, and we have a dirt control over here. And again, this is another example of your rate and depth are not going to give you a stereo image here. It's going to stay center channel. The trip is I actually really like the sound of that dirt right there, and I haven't tried this yet. So let's go ahead and click back on over to our main page. Let's take that time to minimum. Let's go full wet on this, and actually give it a little bit of a let's hear it as a drive pedal. It's a little honky. It's a little mid-rangey. I do kind of like that. It's kind of just a, you know. It does kind of a cool lo-fi dirt thing really, really well. That's fun. I like that. I think that's actually really cool. Interesting. Okay, cool. Let's move on. Okay, now we're in reverse. Let's take it to that obligatory advertised 2.5 seconds. Let's go super high mix. So this is what's interesting. Again, you have a bit control because this at its heart is a digital delay engine right now. Same rules apply. Don't take it to max. If you don't want the bit crushing, take it to minimum. What's really interesting is you have a direction control up here, mostly forward. You can start kind of like cross-fading between forward and backwards. And then into entirely reversed. And then let's take our time a little bit more reasonable. Because you have this click filter here that progressively removes that clickiness. You know, if you're playing where the sample of the reverse kind of cuts to make room for the next one and kind of reverse the current input signal, you're going to get clicks on almost any reverse delay on the market. And this gives you the ability to kind of decide how much of that you want to taper. I like it all the way up. I like a nice smooth reverse. Yeah, it's a really cool reverse. Okay, jumping over to the faux verb, which is the basically diffused reverb. We'll turn off our actual reverb. So again, you're going to have your kind of basics, your repeats, your time. I tend to like this one. You have your highs and your lows. And then again, some bit crushing. And then soft is how much you diffuse. This has like almost a shoegazy quality to it. Except instead of dirt, we're dealing with, again, digital bit crushing. And then into full, just the cloud. There's a great spot early in there that gives you like 1 or 2 taps. It almost sounds like instant oscillation, which is kind of a really cool thing to have access to. And dual delay. Much like the Walrus D1, which is a pedal that was going to be impossible to not bring up over the course of this, the dual mode is going to be the only quote unquote properly stereo image, and I should qualify that with the Walrus D1 version 1, the original release version, not the updated version from last year. But this is going to be the only one that has like left-right subdivision controls and the ability to kind of craft a very specific stereo image like this. But it's interesting, this one's got a lot of like startup cost involved, which is a little off-putting for me sometimes, but will actually give you a lot of control overall. Like, you've got your mix for delay 1, your time for delay 1, and your repeats for delay 1. So if I play a chord, you hear just that right channel. And then I jump over to this other page. And we have entirely separate set of controls for that left channel. The nice thing is you can create these like almost parallel moments in here that gives you like a sense of width without it kind of feeling modulated out of phase with one another, or out of like modulating to create that width. And that kind of thing can be really, really helpful. And then from there you also have, whoops, let's get back to dual. On that page 2, you now have how you want them configured. So you have a mono configuration, where if I take that second time, and the really cool thing about this is you don't have to repatch your stereo cables to create a mono image here in this mode. Or you have your stereo. Or you have a ping pong, which basically is taking that mono mode and applying it as a ping pong stereo delay. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you want this mode kind of implemented. My instinct is always to go with stereo. Okay, and this is ARP. It is actually a delay mode. This is another one that I used as a like full wet immediate modulation tool. Which is one I do really like with a ton of reverb afterwards. So this one's called ARP. It's actually a pitch delay, and let's kind of take a more nuanced look at it. So you can have your mix. Your time. And let's turn down that repeat slightly. Page 2, you're going to have the mode that you're in. So you've got... Okay, so this one actually is going to require a little bit of attention to kind of talk through really quick. So you can apply your pitch shifting pre, post, your delay line, or it can ARP down, ARP up, or ARP in a triangle, and those are your settings. In the ARP modes, you're going to have different patterns you can select between. The mix of no pitch shifting mixed in, and then progressively adding it. And then how quickly you want that ARP to run. Or incredibly slow. But in those pre and posts, so in pre, you're going to have your ability to kind of set that tuning. You can have it down tuned slightly for like chorusing. And then there's fine tuning for that chorusing. Oh, let's actually get to a pitch. So let's do a fifth. Again, you have that fine tuning to take it slightly sharp or slightly flat. If you want that chorusing effect. And then you've got post, which is going to do the That's right, that's right. My brain got turned around for a second. Pre is going to do cascading pitch shifting. Let's speed it up a little bit. So that kind of stepping up and away. You can hear kind of each step goes a little bit higher, which is not a thing I ever like. Post applies the pitch shifting after the delay, which means it's a static single step in whatever direction you want. Which is how I like to run it. And then you have, of course, you have your ARPs. But yeah, that's the pitch shifting on this thing. I really like the post, and I like that bizarre ARP sound that I came up with that was on that intro song. It's quite fun. And we are back around to tape. So let's use this as an opportunity, this kind of standard delay sound that we have right here. To step through some of the stuff we've missed. We have dynamics here. So Bloom is going to apply just to your signal, and you're going to watch that guy for your release, which is going to be pretty crucial if you want those like really gentle swells on the repeats. If you watch, let's jump over to the next mode to demonstrate that. So up here, we jump over to swell next, which is going to apply to our whole signal. Which I love. I did a lot of these on the first half of that intro song. A thing to be aware of, if that light doesn't go out, you're not reclosing your gate, and it will do this. Which is not what you want when you want those nice smooth swells. So you're gonna wanna like control that release function to get you back to where you wanna be. Yeah, I think that the swell mode on this thing is really cool. And then you also have a gate. Yep, gate, it's cool. Oh, there's some cool filter delays in here that we should talk about for a moment. Let's go envelope up. Let's add some resonance. Again, half of the modes on the rewind, in my opinion, almost function better as like dry guitar modulators than they do as delay modes. This is just a fixed filter that you can kind of set to cut off whatever frequencies you want, which is really cool. Expression controllable, of course. Or you can go random with it, because of course you can. These are exactly what you think they would be. And then envelope down. Again, these are all applicable to, and not applicable, they are meant to be applied to your delay line. I am of a mind that these serve much stronger as dry tone modulators. And that's Rewind from Alexander Pedals.